I was 7 months pregnant when my mother-in-law decided to humiliate me in front of 50 people. It was my husband Damien's birthday party, hosted at his family's mansion in Chicago. The house was filled with his relatives, business partners, and friends. I was standing near the dessert table, gently rubbing my belly, when Margaret Voss, my mother-in-law, walked up to me with a glass of wine in her hand and a fake smile on her face. She looked me up and down and said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "You know, Elena, for someone who claims to be 7 months pregnant, you don't look very big. Are you sure there's actually a baby in there?" The people standing around us went quiet. I felt my face heat up. I opened my mouth to respond, but she continued before I could say anything. "I mean, it's quite convenient, isn't it?" she said with a light laugh. "Damien was about to break up with you last year, and suddenly you're pregnant. Almost like you timed it perfectly. Some women will do anything to trap a rich man." A few people chuckled awkwardly. Others just stared at me, waiting for my reaction. I stood there frozen, one hand protectively over my stomach. My husband Damien was across the room talking to some business associates. He hadn't heard what his mother just said. Margaret took a sip of her wine and looked at me with fake concern. "I'm just saying this for your own good, dear. Faking a pregnancy is a very serious thing. If people find out the truth, it won't end well for you." That's when something inside me snapped. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, loud enough for everyone around us to hear, "Margaret, if you're so sure I'm faking this pregnancy, why don't we go to the hospital right now? We can do an ultrasound in front of everyone here. Let's settle this once and for all." The smile on her face disappeared. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, she looked slightly uncomfortable. Before she could say anything else, I turned around and walked away. I went straight to the bathroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking as I leaned against the sink. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt tears burning in my eyes. This wasn't the first time Margaret had made comments about my pregnancy. She had been doing it for months. Subtle jabs, backhanded compliments, and constant questions about whether I was really showing enough. But tonight, she had crossed the line by saying it publicly. I stayed in the bathroom for almost 15 minutes trying to calm myself down. When I finally came out, Damien was waiting for me in the hallway. "Are you okay?" he asked, concerned. "Mom said you weren't feeling well." I looked at my husband and felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. "Your mother just told everyone I'm faking my pregnancy," I said quietly. Damien's face darkened. "What?" She said it loud enough for half the room to hear. She basically called me a gold digger who got pregnant to trap you. Damien ran a hand through his hair, looking angry. "I'll talk to her." "No," I said, stopping him. "Don't. Not tonight. It's your birthday. I don't want to ruin it." He looked at me for a long moment, then pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'll handle this. I promise."
But deep down, I already knew something. This wasn't going to end with just a conversation. Margaret had crossed a line she couldn't come back from. And I had a feeling that very soon she was going to regret ever opening her mouth about my baby. If you've ever been publicly humiliated or accused of something terrible by your own family, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. I didn't sleep well that night. Even after we got home from the party, I kept replaying Margaret's words in my head. The way she looked at me with that fake concern expression while publicly accusing me of faking my pregnancy. The way some of the guests had laughed along with her. The way Damien's father had simply looked away, pretending he didn't hear anything. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Damien slept beside me. My hand rested on my belly and I could feel the baby moving. Every time she kicked, I felt a strange mix of love and fear. What if Margaret was right about one thing? What if people actually started believing her? The next morning, I woke up to several missed calls from my mother-in-law. I didn't call her back. Instead, I sat at the kitchen counter with a cup of tea, trying to decide what to do. Damien came downstairs, already dressed for work. He kissed the top of my head and sat beside me. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I looked at him. "No," I said honestly. "I'm not okay, Damien." Your mother stood in front of all those people and called me a liar. She said I faked this pregnancy to trap you, and you want me to just be okay?" He sighed and rubbed his face. "I already spoke to her last night after we came home," he said. "I told her she crossed the line and that she needs to apologize to you." I let out a bitter laugh. "An apology? That's it? She publicly humiliated me and that's all you're going to do?" Damien looked uncomfortable. "Elena, she's my mother. I can't just cut her off completely. But I did tell her that if she ever says something like that again, there will be consequences." I stared at him. "Consequences?" I repeated. "Like what? Another stern talking to? Damien, she's been making comments about this pregnancy for months. Last night, she just took it too far. And instead of standing up for me in front of everyone, you're asking me to accept an apology and move on?" He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "I'm trying to keep the peace," he said quietly. "She's family." I looked at my husband and felt something shift inside me. "And what about me?" I asked. "Am I not family? Or does that only count after the baby is born?" Damien didn't have an answer for that. I stood up and walked out of the kitchen. For the next few days, I kept to myself. I went to work, came home, and avoided any conversations about Margaret. She had tried calling me twice, but I didn't pick up. I wasn't ready to hear another fake apology or another excuse. On Thursday, Damien came home early from work. He looked tense. "My mother wants to have dinner with us this weekend. She wants to clear the air." I looked at him from where I was sitting on the couch. "No," I said simply. "Elena, no, Damien. I'm not going to sit across from her and pretend like everything is fine just because she wants to save face. She hasn't even properly apologized."
He sat down beside me. "She's trying," he said. "She knows she went too far. Just give her one chance." I turned to look at him. "Damien, your mother has been undermining me since the day we got married. She's made comments about my job, my background, and now my pregnancy. And every single time, you've asked me to be the bigger person. I'm tired of being the bigger person." He looked frustrated. "What do you want me to do then? Cut my own mother out of my life?" "I want you to stand up for your wife," I said. "I want you to tell her that her behavior is unacceptable and that there will be real consequences if she continues, not just another talk." Damien was quiet for a long moment. "I'll talk to her again," he finally said. But I could tell from his tone that he still didn't fully understand how serious this was for me. That weekend, Margaret came over for dinner anyway. I didn't cook. I ordered food and sat at the table in silence while Damien tried to make small talk. Margaret, on the other hand, acted like nothing had happened. She complimented the food, talked about her garden, and completely ignored the elephant in the room. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I put my fork down and looked at her. "Aren't you going to say anything?" I asked. Margaret looked at me with fake innocence. "About what, dear?" "About what you said at Damien's birthday party, about accusing me of faking my pregnancy in front of everyone." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, that. I already told Damien I may have spoken a bit harshly. These things happen in families. Let's not dwell on it." I stared at her, completely stunned by her audacity. "You think an apology is enough?" I asked. "You stood in front of 50 people and called me a liar and a gold digger. You questioned whether my baby is even real. And you think we can just move on like it never happened?" Margaret's expression hardened. "Elena, you're being dramatic. This pregnancy has clearly made you emotional. I was simply expressing concern." That was the final straw. I stood up from the table. "No," I said. "You weren't expressing concern. You were trying to plant doubt in everyone's mind about me and my baby. And I'm done pretending that your behavior is normal." I looked at Damien. "I'm going to stay at my sister's place for a few days. I need some space." Damien stood up quickly. Elena, don't do this. We can talk about this. I've tried talking, but every time you defend her or ask me to be understanding. I'm pregnant, Damien. I shouldn't have to fight for basic respect in my own marriage. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Margaret's voice followed me. You're overreacting, Elena. This is exactly why I had my doubts about you. I stopped at the door and turned around. Margaret, I said coldly, you have no idea what I'm capable of when someone threatens my child, but you're about to find out. Then I walked out. As I drove to my sister's house, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt done. Done with trying to please my in-laws, done with staying quiet for the sake of peace, done with being treated like I was lucky to be part of their family. They had started this war. Now it was time for me to finish it. I stayed at my sister's apartment for 5 days. Her name was Sophia, and she was the only person in my family I still trusted. She didn't ask too many questions at first. She simply gave me the guest room, made sure I was eating, and let me cry when I needed to. On the third night, while we were sitting on her balcony, she finally asked, "Are you going to tell me what actually happened?" I looked down at my tea and told her everything, from Margaret's comment at the party to Damien asking me to be understanding. Sophia listened quietly, but I could see the anger growing on her face. When I finished, she shook her head. Elena, this is messed up. Your mother-in-law basically called you a liar and a gold digger in front of everyone, and your husband is still defending her? That's not okay. I stayed quiet. Sophia leaned forward. You know what the worst part is? She said. They're not even sorry. They're just uncomfortable because you finally stood up for yourself. That's why Damien keeps calling and texting you. Not because he's worried about you, but because he wants things to go back to normal. I looked at my phone. Damien had called me 12 times since I left. I hadn't answered even once. On the 5th day, I decided to go back home. Not because I missed Damien or wanted to make peace with Margaret. I went back because I realized something important while staying at Sophia's. If I kept running, they would keep controlling the situation. I needed to face this head on. When I walked into the house that evening, Damien was sitting in the living room. He stood up the moment he saw me. Elena, he said, relief clear in his voice. You're back. I didn't hug him. I simply put my bag down and looked at him. I'm back, I said, but things are going to be different. He ran a hand through his hair, looking tired. I spoke to my mother again. She admitted she went too far at the party. She said she was just worried about me and the family's reputation. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Worried about the family's reputation? I repeated. Damien, she stood in front of 50 people and called me a fraud. She questioned whether our baby is even real. And you're still making excuses for her? Damien looked frustrated. She's my mother, Elena. What do you want me to do? Disown her? I want you to stand up for your wife, I said firmly. I want you to tell her that her behavior is unacceptable and that there will be consequences. Not another I'll talk to her. Actual consequences. He was quiet for a few seconds. What kind of consequences? He finally asked. I looked him straight in the eyes. If she ever speaks about me or this pregnancy like that again, I will cut her off completely. And if you keep defending her over me, then I'll have to reconsider this marriage too. Damien's face went pale. You're threatening to leave me? I'm telling you the truth, Damien. I'm pregnant with your child. I shouldn't have to fight your mother just to be respected in my own home. If you can't protect me from her, then I'll protect myself.
He sat down on the couch, looking defeated. "I don't want to lose you," he said quietly. "But she's my mother. This is complicated." I shook my head. "No, Damien. It's actually very simple. You either choose your wife and child, or you keep choosing your mother. You can't have both if she continues to treat me like this." He didn't say anything after that. I went upstairs and unpacked my things. For the first time since the party, I felt like I had some control over my life again. But I also knew that Margaret wasn't going to back down so easily. 2 days later, she proved me right.
I was at a prenatal checkup when I received a message from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of a private family group chat. In it, Margaret had written, "Elena is becoming more unstable by the day. I'm worried about Damien. She's clearly manipulating him with this pregnancy. We need to be careful." Below that, one of Damien's aunts had replied, "Do you really think the baby is his?" I stared at the screenshot, feeling my blood run cold. Margaret wasn't just talking behind my back anymore. She was actively trying to turn the entire family against me. That evening, when Damien came home, I showed him the screenshot. He read it, and his face went through several emotions: shock, anger, and then guilt. "I'll talk to her," he said immediately. I shook my head. No, talking isn't enough anymore. I looked at my husband and made a decision I had been avoiding for weeks. "I want you to choose Damien," I said. "Either you set clear boundaries with your mother right now, or I will start protecting myself and this baby without you." Damien looked at me for a long time. Then he picked up his phone. He called his mother and put it on speaker. "Mom," he said when she answered, "we need to talk, and this time you're going to listen." I stood there listening as Damien finally, for the first time, started setting boundaries with his mother. But even as he spoke, I had a feeling that Margaret wasn't going to accept this quietly. She was going to fight back, and I needed to be ready. After that phone call with his mother, Damien became quieter. He started spending more time at home and less time at his parents' house. I could tell he was struggling between his loyalty to his mother and his responsibility toward me and our baby. But Margaret didn't back down. Instead, she became more aggressive. 2 days after Damien spoke to her, I received a call from an unknown number. When I picked up, it was one of Damien's aunts, Aunt Patricia. "Elena," she said in a concerned tone, "I just wanted to check on you. Margaret told us that you've been very emotional lately because of the pregnancy. She's worried you might be struggling mentally." I felt my blood run cold. "Excuse me?" I said. "She said you've been saying strange things and that you might need professional help," Aunt Patricia continued. "She asked me to talk to you because she's concerned." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "Margaret is lying," I said firmly. "She's the one who has been spreading lies about me. I'm not unstable. I'm pregnant, and I'm tired of being treated like a liar." There was an awkward silence on the other end. "Oh, I see," Aunt Patricia said, sounding unsure. "Well, I just wanted to check. Take care, dear." She hung up quickly. I sat on the couch, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. Margaret wasn't just talking behind my back anymore. She was actively trying to paint me as mentally unstable to the entire family. That evening, when Damien came home, I showed him the call log and told him what his aunt had said. His face turned red with anger. "She's crossing every line now. I'll talk to her again." "No," I said. "Talking isn't working. She's only getting worse." I looked at my husband seriously. "Damien, I want you to cut him off completely. No more calls, no more visits, no more defending her. If you can't do that, then I will have to make some decisions for myself and this baby without you." Damien looked conflicted. "She's my mother, Elena." "And I'm your wife," I said. "And this is your child. You can't keep choosing her over us." He didn't give me an answer that night. But the very next day, Margaret made a mistake that changed everything. I was at a routine prenatal checkup when I received a message from an unknown number. It was a voice recording. When I played it, I heard Margaret's voice speaking to someone, probably one of her friends. "I'm telling you, that girl is dangerous," Margaret was saying. "She's manipulating Damien. I wouldn't be surprised if that baby isn't even his. She's probably trying to trap him with a fake pregnancy so she can get her hands on his money." I sat in my car outside the clinic, listening to the recording with my hands shaking. Someone had recorded her. I didn't know who sent it to me, but I was grateful. That evening, I played the recording for Damien. His face went pale as he listened. When it finished, he didn't say anything for almost a minute. Then he looked at me and said, "I'm done." He picked up his phone and called his mother. He put it on speaker so I could hear. "Mom," he said when she picked up. "I heard the recording. The one where you said Elena is probably faking the pregnancy to trap me for money." Margaret went silent for a few seconds. "Damien, that's not what I meant." "Don't lie," he cut her off. "I heard it with my own ears. You're not just attacking my wife anymore. You're attacking my child. I'm done. From today onwards, you're no longer welcome in our lives. Don't call me. Don't come to our house. And if you try to contact Elena again, I will cut you off completely." Margaret started crying on the phone. "Damien, please, you can't do this to me. I'm your mother." "You stopped acting like a mother the day you started attacking my wife and unborn child," he said coldly. "This is your last warning." He ended the call. I looked at Damien, surprised. This was the first time he had taken such a strong stand against his mother. He turned to me. "I'm sorry it took me so long," he said. "I should have protected you from the beginning." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. But even though Damien had finally chosen me, I knew Margaret wasn't going to accept this quietly. She had already shown that she was willing to lie and manipulate to get what she wanted. And I had a feeling she still had one last card left to play. After Damien cut off his mother, things became strangely quiet for a few days. Margaret didn't call, didn't text, and didn't show up at our house. At first, I thought she had finally accepted that her behavior had consequences. I was wrong. It started with small things. One afternoon, I received a message from an old college friend of Damien's. She asked me if everything was okay between me and Damien because Margaret had mentioned that you two were having serious problems because of your pregnancy. I told her it wasn't true and ended the conversation. 2 days later, another one of Damien's aunts called him and said Margaret had told her that I was refusing to let Damien see his family and that I was controlling him. Damien shut that down immediately, but it was clear what Margaret was doing. She was trying to isolate us. She was spreading lies, quietly, one person at a time, hoping to turn people against me. I tried to ignore it at first, but then something happened that pushed me over the edge. I was at a routine doctor's appointment when I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of me. Someone had taken it while I was walking out of the clinic. Below the photo was a message.
"Some women will do anything to keep a rich man, even fake a pregnancy. Be careful who you trust." My hand started shaking. I showed the message to Damien that evening. His face turned red with anger. "This is my mother," he said. "I know it is. She's trying to scare you." I looked at him. "Damien, this isn't just about me anymore. She's trying to make people believe that our baby isn't real. What if this gets out of hand? What if people actually start believing her?" Damien ran a hand through his hair, looking stressed. "I'll talk to her again." "No," I said firmly. "Talking isn't working. She's only getting more desperate. We need to do something that actually stops her." Damien looked at me. "What do you want to do?" I was quiet for a few seconds before I answered. "I want to expose her." Damien frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what kind of person she is. I've been quiet for too long. I've let her spread lies and humiliate me because I didn't want to create more drama. But she's not stopping. So now I'm going to make sure she can't lie anymore." Damien looked worried. "Elena, if we do that, there's no going back. She's still my mother." I looked at him seriously. "And I'm still your wife. And this is still your child. I'm not asking you to choose between us again. I'm asking you to stand beside me while I protect our family." Damien was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said. "What do you need me to do?" That night, we came up with a plan. Margaret had been very careful with her words when speaking directly to us, but she had been careless when talking to other people. She had left behind recordings, messages, and witnesses. We spent the next week quietly collecting everything. I reached out to the people she had spoken to, the aunt who called me, a few of Damien's cousins, and even one of the guests from the birthday party. Some of them were hesitant at first, but when I showed them the pattern of her behavior, they agreed to help. By the end of the week, we had enough. Voice recordings of Margaret calling me unstable, screenshots of messages where she questioned the baby's paternity, statements from people she had tried to turn against me. It was more than enough. On a Friday evening, I sat down with Damien and we made one final decision. We were going to expose her, not just to the family, but publicly. I wrote a calm, factual post and shared it on social media, tagging Damien's family members. I didn't attack her personally. I simply laid out the facts, what she had said at the party, the lies she had spread afterward, and the recordings and messages we had collected. I ended the post with one line. I stayed silent for a long time because I didn't want to create drama, but I will no longer stay silent while someone tries to destroy my reputation and question my child's existence. Within an hour, the post had gone viral within their social circle. Margaret's phone started blowing up. By the next morning, the damage was done. Several of her close friends had distanced themselves from her. Some of Damien's relatives publicly supported me in the comments. Margaret's reputation, which she had carefully built over the years, was crumbling in real time. That afternoon, Margaret showed up at our house. She looked furious. Her perfectly styled hair was messy, and her face was red with anger. "How dare you? How dare you humiliate me like this in front of everyone?" Damien stood in front of her, blocking the entrance.
"Mom, you did this to yourself," he said coldly. "You spent months lying about Elena and our baby. Did you really think there would be no consequences?" Margaret's eyes were wild. "She's turning you against me," she shouted, pointing at me. "She's manipulating you. That baby isn't even—" Damien cut her off sharply. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Margaret looked at him, breathing heavily. "You're choosing her over your own mother?" Damien looked at her without any emotion. "I'm choosing my wife and my child. Something you should have done a long time ago." Margaret stood there for a few seconds, her face twisting with rage and humiliation. Then, without saying another word, she turned around and walked back to her car. As she was leaving, she stopped and looked back at me one last time. "You're going to regret this," she said. I looked at her calmly. "No, Margaret," I replied. "You already do." She got into her car and drove away. That night, Damien and I sat on the couch together. He looked exhausted, but there was also a sense of relief on his face. "I'm sorry it took me so long," he said quietly. "I should have protected you from the beginning." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters."
For the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. Margaret had tried to destroy me, but in the end, she had destroyed herself, and I had finally taken back control of my life. The days after I posted the truth about Margaret were chaotic. Within 48 hours, the post had spread through Damien's entire social circle. People who used to praise Margaret for being a respectable woman were now messaging me privately, asking if everything I wrote was true. Some even sent me their own stories about how Margaret had mistreated them in the past. Margaret's reputation, which she had carefully protected for decades, was falling apart in real time. She tried to fight back at first. She posted a long, dramatic statement on her own social media calling me unstable and manipulative. But this time, it backfired. People had already seen the recordings and messages. Her post only made her look more guilty. Within a week, several of her closest friends stopped talking to her. Two of Damien's aunts publicly commented under my post saying they believed me. Even some of Damien's business associates started distancing themselves from Margaret. She had gone from being a respected socialite to someone people whispered about. Damien's father, who had always stayed quiet, finally called Damien one evening. He told him that Margaret had gone too far and that he was considering separating from her. That news hit Margaret the hardest. One afternoon, almost 3 weeks after the exposure, Margaret showed up at our house again. This time, she didn't come screaming or threatening. She looked defeated. Damien opened the door, but he didn't let her inside. "What do you want?" he asked coldly. Margaret looked at him with tired eyes. "I just want to talk. Please." Damien looked at me. I nodded, so he stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the couch and stared at her hands for a long time before speaking. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "My friends won't talk to me. Your father barely looks at me. People I've known for 30 years are avoiding me like I have a disease." She looked up at me. "I know you hate me, Elena, and maybe you should, but I need you to understand something. I was scared. I was scared that you were going to take my son away from me. I thought if I could make him doubt you, he would come back to me." I looked at her without any sympathy.
"You didn't do this because you were scared, Margaret," I said. "You did this because you couldn't stand the fact that your son chose someone else over you. You tried to destroy me because you couldn't control him anymore." She didn't deny it. Damien spoke next, his voice firm. "Mom, I'm not going to ask Elena to forgive you. What you did was unforgivable. But I also won't let you keep hurting her. From now on, you stay away from us. Completely. If you ever try to contact Elena or spread lies about her again, I will cut you off forever. Do you understand?" Margaret looked at her son with tears in her eyes. "Damien, I'm your mother." "And she's my wife," he replied, "and this is my child. You had a choice. You chose to attack them. Now you have to live with that." Margaret sat there for a few more seconds, then slowly stood up. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply nodded and walked out of our house. That was the last time I saw her. In the months that followed, Margaret's life continued to fall apart. Damien's father eventually filed for separation. Most of her social circle completely cut her off. She moved out of the big house and into a smaller apartment alone. Meanwhile, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Damien was an amazing father from day one. He never once made me feel like I had to fight for his support again. We became a team. As for my relationship with Margaret, there wasn't one anymore. She sent a few messages over the months, mostly around the baby's birth, but I never replied. Damien kept minimal contact with her, only because she was still his mother, but he made it very clear that she would never be a part of our child's life. One evening, almost a year after everything happened, I was sitting on the balcony with Damien while our daughter slept inside. He looked at me and asked something I wasn't expecting. "Do you regret exposing her?" I thought about it for a moment. "No," I said honestly. "She tried to destroy me and our child's reputation. If I hadn't fought back, she would have kept doing it. Sometimes people only stop when they face real consequences." Damien nodded slowly. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see that," he said. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "You're here now.
That's what matters. If you've ever been publicly humiliated or attacked by someone who was supposed to support you, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. You know, after everything that happened with Margaret, I realized something important. Sometimes people will test how much disrespect you're willing to tolerate. And when you finally decide that you've had enough, they will call you dramatic, crazy, or difficult. But protecting yourself and your peace is never dramatic. Margaret tried to break me. In the end, she broke herself. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or violent. Sometimes it's simply refusing to stay silent anymore and letting the truth do the rest.